Hey everybody, Penny here. Welcome to my kitchen. So today we are going to try a recipe from a cookbook called the Harrowsmith Cookbook Volume 3, which Barry got me, and one of our neighbors had a garage sale. So he picked me up a cookbook. Yay! And in here it says, wonderful oatmeal raisin cookies. And then it says in capital letters, no exaggeration, these are truly wonderful, chewy, and crisp at the same time. So we're going to put that to the test. Now, I have to confess, I have never baked with shortening. And this recipe calls for 1 cup of shortening, no butter. But when I compared the butter package to the shortening package, same amount of cholesterol, same amount of saturated fats, same amount of calories, So I thought that was pretty interesting. But we'll see what the flavor difference might be, or how crispy they really are, and how wonderful they really are. I'm sure they're going to be very good. So we have 1 cup of shortening. We have 1 cup of brown sugar. We have ½ a cup of white sugar. We have 1 egg right here that I've beaten just a little bit. To that egg, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Not cinnamon, vanilla. This is vanilla. Okay, so 1 teaspoon of vanilla. There we go. Lay that aside. And you don't need to really beat your egg really well, like to get it fluffy. You just want it all mixed together so it's evenly distributed in the bowl. So that's what we have to add first to our shortening. Then we are going to add, normally this would go in with the dry ingredients, but this recipe says to add it as its own step. So we have here, we have ½ a teaspoon of cinnamon, ½ teaspoon of ginger, ¼ teaspoon of nutmeg, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So that'll be its own step. And then once that's all incorporated, then we're going to be adding 2 cups of rolled oats, half a cup, 1 cup regular flour, ½ a cup of whole wheat flour, and I called for 1 cup of raisins. I only have 3/4 of a cup on hand, but I'm sure that'll be just fine. So we're going to take a minute and combine that so it's all evenly combined and mixed through, and we don't end up with a bunch of oats in one cookie and a bunch of raisins in another cookie. There we go. There we are. So step number 1, cream the sugars with the shortening. Now the shortening is actually quite soft compared to butter because it's just in the aisle, it's not in the fridge, but I did put it in the microwave for like 25 seconds. That's the oven. So the recipe calls for 350, but I have a convection oven, which means I can do more than 1 rack at a time. And the convection oven tends to be a little hotter, so I have my convection oven on 325, but that's okay. So if you know that your oven is normally a little hotter than recipes call for, you can just turn it down by about 25 degrees or so. And that'll be wonderful. Now we'll get this all mixed in here. Takes a minute. And that's okay too. So far, works the same as butter. Okay, let's put in our egg. And now I'm going to switch over to a whisk, because now that we have a little bit of moisture added, I am probably going to be able to cream this a little better with a whisk. There we go. Now we're getting all the lumps and the bumps out. Yay! Just the vanilla and the brown sugar smells delicious. You will need greased or parchment paper cookie sheets. Now we're going to add, the next step is to add the the cinnamon, the salt, the ginger, the nutmeg, and the baking soda. So put that all over there. Again, normally in recipes, those are considered dry ingredients, and they're added to the dry ingredients. So not quite sure why it's different, but that's okay. It's all good. Now, you know what? I'm going to need a spatula. I'll be right back. There we go. So, I think we're done with our whisk because we have all those lovely ingredients all put together. Oops, made a mess. Nothing new for me. But that's okay. All right, now we're going to add in all of our oats, flour, and raisins. And again, this may take a minute because basically can't use the whisk because it's too dry and stiff, and it'll just get stuck in there and you won't be able to get it out. You could use a wooden spoon. I just happen to have the spatula in the bowl, and I like using a spatula because I can get around the bottom, I can get around the sides, and I can make sure it's all incorporated. This is a little dry, to be honest, so I'm wondering how it's going to be chewy. I can see crispy, but as we go along here, it is definitely absorbing all the oats and the flour. Sorry. There we go. Let's just have another little bit of a go. Now, it doesn't say how big the cookies should be. It simply says to roll into small balls and place on a greased cookie sheet. Well, what I consider a small ball and what someone else considers a small ball, who knows? But today, I'm going to use my ice cream scooper that I never use for ice cream. I always use for baking. And if you look on the inside where the little piece goes back and forth, you'll be able to see that this is a 3 tablespoon scoop. I had a 2 tablespoon scoop, but it broke. So what I like to do is, rather than get my hands in there and so on and so forth, which you can definitely do, I like to scoop my cookies and my muffins and so on, and do it that way. And that way they're pretty much evenly sized and they would be evenly cooked. So my hands are clean. I washed them before we started. Let's see. It does say to roll. This does look really dry to me. I'm going to make an alteration on the fly, and I'm going to add just a drop of milk. Not a lot, just a drop. It's probably only a couple tablespoons, to be totally honest. But I think it needs a bit more moisture, because when I was holding that particular little bit of cookie dough, it seemed really dry and I couldn't see how it was going to hold together. So I'm just going to put a little bit more right here, simply because I have some really dry oats on that side and I want to get it all incorporated. So, and sometimes when you're baking, just like cooking, you have to do stuff like this. You have to be able to feel with your hands and see with your eyes, you know, is it too dry? Is it too wet? If it was too wet, I could add another tablespoon or so of rolled oats, or a little bit of flour sprinkled across so you don't get any lumps. So sometimes you need to do that when you're trying out recipes. And you and I are trying out this one together today. Now that to me looks much better. So I'd say, if I had to guess, that was probably 3 to 4 tablespoons of milk. So let's see what happens. Now we're going to get a tray. The tray has already been greased. And this is my little bit of mess that I made. And that's all right too. Okie dokie. So, now, oh yeah, that's much better. It just stayed in a little ball. Didn't even have to form it. So, according to the small balls that it's calling for, we should get 4.5 dozen cookies. I don't see that happening. I think we're going to have much bigger cookies than what they were anticipating. And that's okay. What that does mean, though, is we will have to extend our cooking time. So it says between 8 to 10 minutes. I'm going to let her go for 12 to 15. And when we come back, I will let you know what we ended up with. So I'm going to finish putting these on the 2 cookie sheets, and we'll be back shortly. Hey everybody, back again. Okay, so these are in the oven for a total of 15 minutes. And they are nice and little bit of golden around the edges. They're still a little bit warm. And then of course the back is golden and crispy. So Barry and I just split one. And I wish the camera was on because Barry went, oh my God. He really, really liked it. And they are delicious. They are truly wonderful. And it says chewy and crispy at the same time. Absolutely. The chewiness inside, but the edges are crispy. The recipe does not lie. It was really, really good. Now, the one thing I didn't tell you before because I wanted to see how it turned out. The recipe itself says to make them into balls, flatten with a floured fork. So that just means you take your fork, you dip it in a bit of flour. And all that means is you don't want your fork to stick to each cookie. So in between flattening each one, you would dip your fork in the flour. However, this batch, I did not flatten. And I did the same thing with some peanut butter cookies. Peanut butter cookies will flatten on their own. But if you want the fork prints, just because it looks nice, go for it. These, I did not flatten. These, I did. And to be honest, it's not worth the effort. Don't bother. You can't see the fork prints. You can't tell the difference. They're both cookies that are delicious. So, I hope you give it a go. If you have any recipes you'd like me to try or experiment with, send me a little note on Facebook. Or if you like, you can, if you're one of my email people, send me an email and with the recipe, and I'll do what I can. So, enjoy! Bye!